Hi, Craig. Welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me, Andy.
This is a very overdue episode. We have been talking about doing this for so long, and I couldn't believe sort of sitting down, just looking at our previous, all the podcasts we've recorded, and we haven't done this yet. So I am so looking forward to today's episode. First of all, because I just love catching up with you and chatting and hanging out and talking shop, but more so because it's going to be an interesting year. You are a very interesting guy with a lot of stuff, huge amount of experience, and I'm really keen to just get your ear on what you think this year might look like, what you're going to be up to, what we can expect from you, and kind of see what else comes out of the wash. So, Craig, I am sure that there are very few people listening to today's episode that don't know who you are, but in case, on the off chance that someone hasn't happened upon you yet, has only just found their way to the podcast or you, can you give us a quick intro? Who are you, what are you doing, and where are you doing it all?
Cool. So, hi guys. My name's Craig Sullivan, a.k.a. the Property Apprentice on Instagram, and I'm a property developer in North Kent, and I've basically gone all in on the student HMO game. I've been investing in student HMOs for the last 10 years, and I've been through a lot. So that pretty much sums up myself. And I might shout out, big up the grafters a few times.
You, of all the people I've probably met along the way, Craig, you and I have the most similar businesses. We both have been investing in student HMOs for a long time. I think it's fair to say that you and I both favour student HMOs over pretty much anything else. We both built agencies, our own portfolios. We've both got other stuff going on, and we both kind of started it at probably a similar time in our lives. It's your birthday today. You're 36, so you have got a year on me, but nevertheless, and by the way, a big happy birthday from us at the podcast.
I'm 35,
we 35, okay. You're 35, I'm 36. I've actually lost track of how old I am, and that is starting to get a little bit concerning. But happy birthday, Craig.
Thank you, mate.
Craig, for 35 years, you have achieved a huge amount. I mean, in anyone's books, you've achieved a huge amount. So I'm keen to talk a little bit about this and how you've managed to do it over the years. But before we do, start of the new year. And I know, like me, and obviously you've been on the mastermind for a couple of years, setting goals is a big part of your calendar. Have you had to think about your goals yet? And are you in a position to maybe just share one or two goals? What can we expect from you this year, Craig? Where are you planning to focus your efforts?
Absolutely. I love a goal. It just gets me out of bed in the morning. And just give you that drive and that focus. And I absolutely love sticking to them. A lot of people kind of fizzle out and stuff like that. But I think you've got to really hone in and make those goals personal to you. So how I like to break down my goals is I like to do it basically property purchases. So the number of property purchases a year. I don't do it monetary. I do it on the number of properties because the money will come. I also do income. So I try to increase my income by a certain percentage every year. And the next one is a health-based goal. So I try to basically do that on body fat and try to get that down as much as possible. And then the last one that I'm going to do this year is probably books read. So I really want to hone in and I like enjoying listening to podcasts and that's kind of what I want to do.
I like that. You've got goals, sort of making sure that you're focusing on different areas of your life, which is great. And I agree. I think it's really easy to get focused on the money, isn't it? And kind of get sucked in by those targets that only kind of take us towards monetary goals. But actually, I think taking care of ourselves and general well-being, getting that balance right. And I've learned that over certainly the last few years. Actually getting that right and getting better results there has actually helped with the other bits. And then, of course, the money has followed.
Yes.
2022 was an unusual year, Craig. Interest rates, mini budgets, things like that. It was a really, really strange year. Now we're past it, we're beyond it, and we're looking ahead at a new year. There's a lot of stuff that came out last year, changes or proposals to change legislation. Obviously we're looking at maybe a big change in government. When you look ahead at this year, what do you foresee? Do you see any big changes, shake-ups to the property market, to business owners in general? How are you feeling about things going into this year?
So absolutely. So I'm quite vocal on where I think the property market is going in terms of it's not looking good. You'll see a lot of that on my Instagram with the deaf horns and the other things as well, but a lot of it's data as well. And so I do try to dramatise things with the old deaf horns, but the core focus is the data side of things. But so yeah, I think when you zoom out and look at the macro from the last 10 years since I've been investing, I honestly think that, so the last 12 years, should I say, has been probably the best, one of the best opportunities to invest in property in our lifetimes. Because if you have a look at the trajectory, it's always going up, and now it's starting to turn. And there's a whole heap of factors that are going to kind of affect the next 12 to 24 months from my forecast. So yeah, I feel that there's going to be dips in prices. This is due to obviously house prices being as high as they are, but then interest rates being increased in such a short amount of time, which has caught a lot of people off guard, myself included. And obviously we've got the bills. We had the war in Ukraine and Russia, which obviously hasn't helped things. So yeah, you're bang on the money. Like in terms of, and we had COVID before that, which kind of injected a shed load of stimulus, which kind of just pushed the can down the road a bit. But now we're seeing the drop off, a lot steeper drop off because of that. So yeah, my outlook is be very cautious. I'm cash ready. So thankfully I kind of expected a top, and I started refinance from January all the way down to July last year, and I managed to get out a large portion of my money, and it was painful in the sense I had some great rates. I had like some lifetime trackers, I had some really good mortgage rates, but at the same time I thought now is a good time to be liquid. And if it's not, then I'll carry on buying. It's no big deal. But lo and behold, the market's changed. And that goes into what my strategy's kind of changed into. Whereas before, it's a lot of on-market deals, going to agents, building up a relationship with the agents, putting an asking price. Now I've shifted, going back to auctions, just because I feel that there's big bargains to be had in the auction world. And as long as you're liquid, a lot of buyers have been put off because they can't act as quick, and plus debt is a little bit more expensive now, so that's putting off a lot more people at auctions. So I think being liquid is going to act very well for me.
It sounds like you used last year and all of that uncertainty to get you into the best possible position for this year and maybe the next couple of years. And you're so right when you step back and look at what's happened over the last few years. The war in Ukraine, the utility bills, cost of living crisis, interest rates, several changes of government, or certainly the Prime Minister, Brexit before that, COVID, this huge global sort of crisis, and like you said, just pumped, this huge stimulus into the economy. I think now just sort of maybe stepping back and looking at what has happened over the last few years, it's really not difficult to see why, things are looking very, very unpredictable, very different. Like you said, very much sort of going in the opposite direction as to kind of what we've been used to over the last few years. And it's funny because I think they always say, you never quite know when you're in the good old days. And I'm with you, Craig. I think those good old days are behind us now. On interest rates, I've got some refinancing coming up next year. I didn't have a huge amount to be refinanced this year, actually, apart from some new buildings that aren't HMOs. My lowest current rate, and this is unbelievable. I think for anyone listening today, I think that they won't quite believe this, but my highest actual rate on any of my HMOs at the minute is 2.4%, which is, wow. When you look around in the market and you just shop around at the minute, it's unbelievable. And it's just such a big jump to where we are now. I know you managed to kind of get yourself wedged in at some pretty good rates in the 3s and 4s, didn't you? Yeah. But looks like we're in the 5s and maybe the 6s, for quite some time. What do you think?
Absolutely, and to be fair, there's been two of my deals where I didn't get through in time, and they're currently on variables, and it's painful. It's painful to see, and I think the profit has just been absolutely sucked out of them because of it. And to be fair, these ones are in my own name. And so I can't offset the mortgage interest, and so I'm probably close to break even at best. And that's someone with a large portfolio, and I can luckily offset that with my other properties. So I'm just thinking those landlords who aren't as fortunate as me, that are sucking up the cost, and that's why I think a lot of landlords are throwing in the towel. And that's probably a trend that you've been seeing. I'm seeing a lot of older stock coming on for sale. I specifically look at the student HMO stock, and a lot of it's coming onto the market for sale, but it's not being then brought and then reused as student HMO stock. It's either being converted into family houses, or it's been used for assisted living, and or even professional HMOs. So I'm seeing that as a trend, but I'm also seeing that as an opportunity.
We're seeing similar stuff. We're seeing definitely more stuff come to the market than we have done for a long time, which is interesting. One of the things that we are seeing is stuff coming to market, but not necessarily taking into account maybe the changes in values. Certainly as far as valuers are concerned, and maybe even lenders. A lot of landlords getting out of the market are still trying to get absolute top dollar for their properties. I get that. I'd probably be doing the same. And you know what? Some of it, is still shifting, which I think shows the huge sentiment in the investment market to still buy. Like, there are still people out there who are, I don't know what you think about this, but quite possibly looking at the cash that they do have and wondering what on earth else they do with it. There are people out there who don't need to leverage it 75%. That's the truth. And they can maybe get themselves onto slightly better mortgage rates. But there are still people seemingly out there that are prepared to pay more, and in a strange way, and maybe this will change, and I think it will change, but at the minute what I'm seeing is more activity in the prime HMO markets up here, but not a huge change in the prices, but a dramatic change in the performance at the back end, which is kind of scary. So either people are not taking that into account, they're just overlooking it, or people are, and they're just sort of thinking, well, what else am I going to do with my money? And this is a really tough one. It fascinates me how quickly things have changed, how quickly that tide has started to go out. Certainly as far as the overall message out there in the public domain about investing in property, all of a sudden buy-to-let's dead, and the returns are not what they are. But of course, only last year property prices were going up and up and up, and for a lot of people that was very difficult for them to actually get in the market. They were waiting for the prices to come down. Now prices are potentially looking at coming down, but interest rates have gone up, and it's difficult to know kind of where you stand with things and whether or not you should get in the first place. And I want to talk about this with you because you've got all this experience and you're obviously still buying, and you touched on maybe a slight change to your strategy, but where do you think the opportunities are over the next 12, 24 months? Where's your interest going to be? And is it still in HMOs, or are you looking at different types of projects?
Absolutely. So my core focus is buying auction properties and adding the value to make them into HMOs. So again, for me, I feel that the biggest opportunity for me and my skill set is kind of buying cheap properties or try to buy auction properties where people are now, it's difficult for them to borrow. It's difficult for them to get builders in because of the short 31-day window you have to complete it. So a lot of amateurs will be put off that, whereas before, money was cheap, and house prices were rising up, so there was that security that I'll refinance after 2 years, or we'll get some money back that way. But now, because the sentiment has changed, I think a lot of people are backing off, just keeping an eye on it, and that's the natural instinct, right? That's what people are going to do. So for me, my kind of window, if you like, is from January to March. I feel that sentiment will be at its lowest, and that's why I feel auctions will be a good place. And I put something up on Instagram. I think it was about 3 weeks ago, about I was watching an auction, and the amount of lots that were going unsold was a joke. And bearing in mind, they weren't even reaching the guide price, and the guide price is usually 20% under, just to attract people. It wasn't even hitting that. So that is a good telltale sign of things to come, I think. So for me, the opportunities that I see are at auction, but I'm also looking at service accommodation. I think buy to let with great respect, I think it's just there's just no money in it, or there's not enough meat in the bone to take the risk, especially with the economy like tinkering on the edge. I think all it takes is for that breadwinner of the family or that household to lose their job, and yeah, it's not going to end well, in my opinion. Whereas HMOs, especially student HMOs, the risk is spread a lot more. It's the fixed contract, which I love, and so yeah, I think that's the opportunities for me. It's auctions, adding value, student HMOs.
When you're looking at your deals, Craig, to potentially turn into student HMOs, when you're stacking the numbers up, what does your investment criteria look like these days? Has that changed as the market has changed, or are you staying kind of put with your investment criteria and quite simply just making sure that you're buying it at a lower price? What does it look like this year, do you think?
So yeah, going back to when I first got into the game, I was looking at return on investments of like nearly 15 to 18%. It was fantastic. Right? And this is it, right? And then you just got to follow that trend, and it's gone down and down and down and down, and that's due to legislation, that's due to taxation, that's due to interest rates. All of that is squeezing the returns on it, and that's for HMOs. That's with good meat on the bone. That's good diversified risk per property. So buy to let, it's a lot worse than that. So yeah, that's why I haven't gone for the buy to let route, just because the numbers just don't stack for me. They just don't attract me, whereas the HMOs do. So yeah, now I'm lucky if I'm hitting 9%. Between 7 to 9% after all said and done at the end of the day, yeah. So that's kind of how those are the figures that I look at.
And do you know what that looks like on a cash flow per room basis? A metric that I often talk about and say is a pretty good middle line is if you can get £250 a month per room after all of your costs, you're probably doing really well in the current market. So a 5-bed, if you're making £1,250 net after everything, I would say you're doing pretty well. But different parts of the country, different property values, different interest rates, depending on your experience, type, size of property. Do you have a figure in mind, or are you less fixated about that and a bit more concerned about your overall return on investment?
So I kind of try and do a minimum return of again, 3 years ago it was about £1,000 a month I wanted net. Per property, but now that's been squeezed. It's probably £750 now. Maybe even 600 when we've had a bad month, when bills have skyrocketed a little bit more. So yeah, it's changed. So that's how I kind of look at it. I just look at the net overall, not per room. Again, the reason for that isn't just because the student let model. I usually rent out in a joint tenancy, and I look at it in bulk, right, as the whole thing. But so yeah, it's that's kind of how I would look at it per investment.
How long have you been investing for now, Craig? When did you actually get started?
So I got started, the very, very first one, which I pitched with my dad, that was 2008. So that was like I put in 10 grand. My dad bought out the whole HMO in cash that he had. And that was like where it all began. That's where I stayed at uni and rented out the other 3 rooms to friends. And it was a very basic HMO. It was just magnolia, like brown carpets, but it was fresh, it was neat, and it was above the competition at the time. It's nothing like what they are now.
So 15 years experience in the game. You've built your own... 15 years. If my maths are right, 15 years. You've built a fantastic portfolio over that time. You've built an agency. You built other businesses as well. What do you think it takes, Craig, to build a business from your personal experience? And I guess there'll be a lot of people tuning into today's episode who are at the early stages, who want to build that business, maybe leave their job, do something that gives them more independence, more financial independence, more freedom of time and choice. What, from your experience, does it take to build a portfolio like this? Because even though property values have maybe consistently gone up over the last decade or so, there's more to it than that. What's your take on it?
So first and foremost, I'd say start with the tenant, or the end user. So if it's SA in York, make sure you know York, the tourist attractions, the busy times, the average price, the quiet periods, the busy periods. know that market inside out. I was very, very fortunate because I went to the university, I knew the area, I had inside knowledge, if you like, of all the other student houses, which were crap. So I knew there was this massive gap for high-end student accommodation in that area, and that's what I was like, yes, it just hit me like a slap across the face. I have to do this, otherwise someone else is going to get there. So I'd say that would be your starting point, is go and visit the area, do your research, know your numbers, know the areas, know the houses, know the streets. And yeah, then once you've got that kind of foundation and vision, then start building the relationships. So start going to agents, start going to letting agents, start going to estate agents, start putting the word out there, start going to mentors that do what you do or are where you want to be, start getting on them. So you've got the knowledge, then you go on to the relationships, and then you just got to plan it. And so I think the good thing is, just as a basic rule, just wind everything back. So live below your means, make sure that your income's as high as possible, especially if you're looking to exit the job, and your expenses are as low as possible. Just for, like, say, a 6 to 12 month buffer period, even though you may be able to afford it, just in case, it will just give you that confidence and that security, and then just go hell and leather for that strategy. And then again, going back to relationships, you can get more more investment from investors. Start pitching yourself, start telling everyone, call on your family members, your friends, call on favours. So a good resource that I had that I could rely on was my dad. He was a builder, so that was all the building costs sorted out. So yeah, relationships is massive, and it will definitely put you ahead, the better relationships that you have.
I couldn't agree more. I think when I look back at the last 14, 15 years, that's one of the things that really stands out to me. A lot of great stuff has happened along the way. It hasn't been easy, but a lot of that stuff that has happened, I could probably, trace it back to an individual who opened up, a door, who presented an opportunity, who introduced me to somebody else, who just made something possible. And it's one of those things that we don't see, until much further down the line, just how valuable that is. And when I started to realise that, and I think I've seen the same in you, I sort of doubled down in building my network, trying to build it without, trying to give without taking anything back. And actually, over the years, built lots of fantastic relationships with people like you, lots of people who could refer me to other people. I remember recently I was sat with someone and just happened to say something about a tax piece that was really quite pertinent to the business that I'm in and I have. And it saved me a huge amount of money, an eye-watering sum of money. And it was just being in the right room, and someone just happened to say something. And the chances of that happening, certainly if you're not in that room, are incredibly slim. So I totally agree. And I think that getting out there and investing time in your network, either in person, whether it's online, whatever it is one of the really kind of hidden but hugely beneficial actions that I think more or less anybody who's trying to build a business, certainly a property business, should be doing right now.
Definitely, absolutely, and you've just got to make sure that you're on the other end of the phone or at the start of your business, and just become that man of value, and be consistent. Like, follow up when you put in offers, or go and see the letting agency and butter them up a bit, and just be consistent and be friendly. Don't be fake, but just be friendly. Just say, look, I'm here. These are my values. This is what I believe in, and people will buy into it. And slowly, you'll siphon out time wasters. You'll siphon out people that you don't get on with, and in the end, you're left with this golden box of just contacts. So, like you said, that will just save you money, earn you money, and it doesn't even have to be monetary. It can be like that they'll do you favours, invite you on skiing trips and stuff like that. Do you know what I mean? It's fantastic. So yeah, that's definitely, it's key. Relationships are absolutely key.
When you look back at the business that you have built, Craig, we've chatted about some of this and we've had some good laughs over the years, but what are some of the difficult things that stand out? We like to be realistic on the podcast. We like to make sure that we share the warts and all. It's easy to get excited about setting goals and buying properties and adding value and generating cash flow. But are there any things over the last decade, 15 years, that really stand out as things that have been difficult to overcome, personal challenges, things in business that you perhaps never expected?
Yeah, so straight away, I think something that I'm known for is my Instagram stories of when like tenants go bad or stuff like that. And in the game that we're in, God, I could write a book on it, Andy. The volume of the things that have happened, from finding bags of weed to a bomb scare to us. We had like a psychopath in one of our properties that were bullying the other, and they had to film it. And oh my God, it's insane. So that, as again a HMO investor, and you're looking at bringing your management in house. Well, there's two sides to it. If you bring it in house and you have to deal with this stuff and learn to deal with this and be very thick-skinned and know the right decisions at the right time, or you employ a manager, a good manager, an experienced manager who's specific to your target audience, because that will make or break your investment. And this is what I said about knowing your tenant type. So knowing if it's student in Birmingham, student HMOs in Birmingham, what do they like? What do they need in their properties? Are they going to be a group and stuff like that? So really homing in and making that experience less conflicted as possible. And of course, you're never going to get it right 100% of the time, but it's all about having the experience, or having someone part of your network who can deal with it. And I'd say that was a big thing.
I've got a lot of stories over the years as well. Even just the other day, I did some inspections in the houses over Christmas and the New Year, because the houses are often empty, very quiet, nice to be able to just get in and do more of an inspection from a landlord's point of view, looking at whether or not we need to plan any painting and decorating, refurnishing, less so about the general upkeep of the house, fire alarm tests, things like that. And I went along and I inspected or checked out some of the portfolio, and I went into one house, and I got to the front door and the lockbox was open. And I thought, here we go. Wide open, no key in it. I knocked on. Unfortunately, someone was in there. Now, I've got a lot of tenants now, like yourself, and as much as I'd like to, I don't know them all personally, and I certainly don't recognise them all. So the tenant answered the door, and he let me in, and he was a really nice guy, Dutch guy, in fact. And it transpired, as I sort of went around the house, trying to locate this key, that none of them actually lived in the house. They were a friend of one of the tenants that they'd met on TikTok. They were 4 boys, all having a lot of fun in the house, who should have been, well, the tenants are certainly aware that I was inspecting, but obviously these boys weren't, trying to get in, 1 or 2 of the rooms, and it was all very embarrassing. But, you just, over the years, you kind of just grow a thick skin, and you get used to it. But you're so right, management and an upkeep of HMOs is probably the single most important part of it all. Without it, it's money just sort of disappears. I don't know whether you feel the same, but you kind of just look at your asset and money just sort of pours out of every single hole possible. And good management is often the only way to really prevent that from happening.
Definitely, and looking for the red flags as well, and getting to know them. As well, that's key, but that comes with experience, right? But absolutely, and I'll top that. So after I don't know if you guys have seen it, but if you go onto my Instagram, you'll see a situation where there was basically one of our checkout clerks found a device, and it looked very suspect. So I thought, well, fine, just to reassure them, I'll send it to our Kent police station. They then phoned me up straight away and said, yeah, you need to phone this anti-terrorist hotline. I was like, oh my God, here we go. And bearing in mind, I've got stuff to do. And this is one property. And so anyway, the armed bomb squad came. They said, no, it's fine. It's a makeshift radio, all the rest of it. And so I thought, oh God, thank God for that. And then 2 minutes later, I get a call from the same inventory clerk who went to another property. And Craig, you're not going to believe this, but there's a dead cat in the garden. And I'm like, right. And he goes, but he's got no ears, no tail, and its paws have been cut off. And I'm like, what? And I goes, right, that's really weird. And I said, because we always start in the garden and work our way through the property. So I said, okay, maybe a fox has got it, maybe a rat's had it, whatever. It's been dead. Anyway, I get another call 5 minutes later. Craig, we think we found the paws to the cat. It's in one of these. It's in a cupboard. And I was like, "You're joking, man!" He took a photo. So again, I had to call the police, and I go, "Yeah, only me. This time it's about a mutilation of a cat." Honestly, and I was like, "This stuff you can't teach on courses." And it's like, who do you call? And And basically, the police came round. They're like, "Yeah, we can't determine whether that was done while the cat was alive or whether it's dead. So therefore, we can't take it any further." And I was just like, "Oh my god!" So that was a very extreme case, but welcome to student HMO, guys.
You never quite know what you're going to get. Fortunately, we've not had anything as awful as that, but yeah, they certainly keep you on your toes. For anyone sort of at the beginning, Craig, those people thinking about getting into the market, maybe considering student HMOs versus professional HMOs. You and I have talked about this before, and I think it was last year we did a live session online together. We had a good chat about some of the best and worst bits of student HMOs and professional HMOs. And I thought it'd be a nice opportunity to kind of recap and go back to that, and certainly with some changes afoot, see whether it's still the case. So from your point of view, Craig, what is it that you value so much in the student HMOs?
So I've dabbled in pretty much all segments of the property market except for assisted living. And the thing I love about the student HMO market is the fact that you get a group of friends that come to you. That in its own is valuable because it saves so much time in renting rooms individually. It saves so much time with the changeover individually. It saves so much time with regards to that they come together and they leave together, which is great. And they're also, from a risk perspective, it's absolutely fantastic because they're all severally liable for the rent. So for me, hands down, you don't get that in any other strategy. With professional HMOs, it's usually individuals that come and fill the house collectively. So therefore, if it's a 5-bed, it's kind of 5 times the work. And it's very bitty. So with regards to someone might stay on for 18 months and someone might stay for 12 months, etc. So there's less kind of control with how they come and go, which means you'll get greater voids and stuff like that. Whereas students, it's to the student cycle as well. So you can predict when your busy times are, you can predict when the checkouts are going to happen, so you can plan around it. So that's why I absolutely love the student HMO market. And as well, to top it off, I think, again, they're all good reasons why, but one of the top ones is that I like the fact that, especially going into a recession or bad turn in the economy, I know my tenants are going to call me up and say, "Oh, Craig, I've been made redundant this month or been served my redundancy notice. I'm not going to be able to pay the rent for the foreseeable future," because they're reliant on their student loans, or they pay their rent in advance if they're a foreign exchange student. So that's, again, it just outweighs the pros and cons for all the other strategies.
I mean, I would second all of that, and that's exactly why I love the model so much. And actually, I would add, going into a recession, and actually, we're already seeing it because of COVID. One of the first things the government did, as a result of COVID, because they were anxious that it was going to chuck us straight into a kind of a deep recession, was that they turned to the universities and increased the cap. They said you can let more people come to university. They increased the cap. So all of a sudden, a good chunk more people were coming through university. And of course, they've gone through their first and second year, and that really starts to squeeze the local sort of population and the housing there. So in cities like Durham and in Bristol and in Manchester, we're seeing students who are literally having to get bussed in from neighbouring cities because there isn't physically enough accommodation. Now, that's terrible and awful, and of course something needs to be done about it. I'm glad I'm one of the people in a position to be able to do something about it. I mean, how great to be in a business where, actually the government's first response to something like a recession, a meltdown of the economy, is to put more people through the education system, which of course requires more housing. And if you're a specialist, you're an expert in the industry, that sort of rental confidence for me. And I think, in a nutshell, the more I think about it, and the older I get, I guess the more boring I sound, but it's that sort of rental confidence now that I love so much. I just kind of yearn it from all of my investments. I just like to know that year after year after year after year, I'm going to be able to rent these properties. I'm going to be able to rent them, within about a week of them going online. I'm going to have it all done and dusted by Christmas. I'm going to have 18 to nearly 24 months of foresight on who's living in my house and how much rent they're paying, what my mortgage costs are going to be, and therefore how much money I'm going to make. And I just think for any business to be in a position where you've got somebody as big as the government almost backing your entire strategy. And don't get me wrong, it's not quite the case everywhere. There are some university towns that are struggling. But I just think that is amazing, incredibly powerful, and combine it with Article 4 directions where there's this huge restriction. Yes, I know that it's really frustrating if you're trying to get into the market, but once you're in and you're buying within an Article 4 direction and you've got stuff in there, it's almost like having a business where, you know, the government and the local council is saying, we're going to restrict the amount of competition for you. You know, crack on, make as much money as you can. Which, like, I just think it's absolutely amazing. And for me, it's that whole combination just makes the model so powerful, even if it is perhaps a little less profitable these days.
Definitely. And when I look back on how I've scaled my property business, and I can hand on heart say I've never had to evict a single tenant, and I've had thousands of tenancies. And so not many people can say that, especially in the professional HMO game, and especially the buy-to-let game. And that's just another reason, is because, the reason why I've been able to scale is because I've had that security, that income, that forecast that's basically guaranteed. Or if not, it's backed by the government. Like you said, not only are they're backing it in terms of payment, but like you said, they're also minimising the competition, especially in those Article 4's areas. So there's not many businesses that have that strength.
Despite all of this knowledge and experience that you've got, Craig, you're somebody like myself who always trying to further your own knowledge and your own experience. You know, you've been a member of our mastermind, and we've worked alongside each other for sort of 2 to 3 years now. And I think for some people, they might see that as being unusual. You know, you're clearly very successful. You clearly, know all of this stuff. What is it about networking? And I see you at various events down, in London as well and things like that. You know, what is it about sort of that element and developing your knowledge base that you value so much? Is it because you want to push your own limits? Is it because you want to keep up with, changing trends? Is it just because you enjoy hanging around people?
Yeah, it's pretty much all of that, I guess. But like I said, as I come into my wiser years, now that I'm 35, like I said, I've gone through that grafting stage, and the last 10 years has really and the macro side of the last decade has really helped with that, as well as like the points we touched upon about the whole the benefits of the student, the income, all of that. It's been fantastic. And now I've come to my older years. I've now got a daughter. I've got a second one on the way. That I've kind of reinvented. Well, I'm in that transition of reinventing myself, where before I would be out the door at say 6, 7 o'clock, and I wouldn't be back until 9, 10, 12 o'clock sometimes. But now the family's here. That's completely all shifted. So now I'm trying to think, right, what else could I do? Where can I put my money? And so something that I love to do is go and network, see what other people are doing. And see where the money's going, where they're spending money, or whether we can work together. And I think there's nothing better or nothing beats it than actually meeting these people face to face, shaking their hand, looking them in the whites of their eye, and getting to know them on a level. And sometimes some of these events, they're the ones that I go to, they're pretty casual. They're not you're all in a room, you introduce yourself. It's in an environment, a relaxed environment, and you can really get to know these people on a level. So there's music, there's drinks, there's food, and it's nice. And that's another reason why I do it, is because I enjoy doing it. I enjoy going on karaoke with people, and that's when you get to really know people. You think, you know what, I'd love to work with them. I'd love to work with them, or I'd love to do something. And that's like another layer going back to the relationships that I think everyone should be working on.
I think it's those sorts of environments where people can be themselves that are so much more valuable if you're doing networking. I've been there, done those networking events. You sit down, you listen to a sob story, you put your hand up for a free book, and got little to possibly nothing out of them. And actually there are lots of different things out there, and sometimes if you go without too much of an agenda and just try and enjoy yourself, be yourself, and try and meet some good people and have some good conversations, you never really know what can come. So I'm looking forward to coming down to London actually this year and hanging out with you at some of these events. Not sure about the karaoke piece. I don't know if anyone wants to hear that, but
I'll get you on there, mate. Give me a few drinks. I'll get you on there. Don't worry about that.
Craig, we've covered some great stuff in today's episode. There's something else I want to talk about, and that is social media. You, like myself, have been very prominent on social media. You seem to always kind of prioritize it. You're a busy guy. You've got a lot of stuff to do, but you turn up, you're on social media, and I guess that's probably how we initially kind of got in touch with each other, is through social media. I can't quite remember, but I assume it probably was. Can you talk to us about the value that you've got from social media? Why, when you've achieved as much as you have, you still spend time on social media, you still invest your resources in social media, and what you actually get from it?
Absolutely. So social media all started off when I think I was on my 8th or 9th project, and I thought an Instagram had just come out, and it was only just the grid. There was no stories, no video function, anything like that. And that's where the Property Apprentice was born. Because I needed a tagline, and I thought, what could kind of sum up my journey and showing people about property development. So I thought, the Property Apprentice, that sounds all right. I'll change it if I need to, and it just stuck. And I just started off with the whole before and after pictures, and then as Instagram added the stories function, I thought, I'll give this a go, and it went from project based to who's the guy behind this account, and then that's when I started seeing a real big following, and then the value I've got from it is basically I sourced my JV partnerships from that as well, which we've gone on to build one pair of JVs. We've gone on to build like a £1 million portfolio, and that's all through the gram. It's just mad, and something that I would urge anyone listening to do is you just never know who's watching. And I never knew any of these JVs before, and like you said, I met yourself, I met Jade, and we're really good friends now, and I get so much inspiration of other investors doing different projects. So social media is a fantastic tool, and I swear by it. And like I said, I try to give value back. I try to give entertainment. I try to give that perspective to show people that they can reach out to me and work with me if I'm that kind of person that you want to work with. So it's absolutely an invaluable tool, and I'd highly recommend it to anyone.
I mean, you definitely do give all that and much more, Craig. I love seeing your stories. I'm often sat there in stitches next to Gemma, watching your stories and messaging you. What advice would you give people who are thinking about setting up a social media account, hoping that it will help them as they build their property business, or maybe they've already got one and they're just not quite sure what to do with it? Because I imagine when you just started, it was certainly the case for me, but when I would post, it would often be like crickets, and over time that changes and you sort of forget that. But it can be tough at the beginning, and it can be difficult to get up and do it again and again and again to the same sound of crickets.
Mm-hmm. So like that is exactly the same with me. I don't think I did my first one face to face. I did it so that the camera pointed out when I would just show people and I would talk, and then that was kind of I eased myself in that way. And I'd recommend that any beginner do the same. Don't just get straight on there, all glitz glamour with the lights and all of that. Just go in gently at your rate, and slowly you'll become more confident. You'll start dropping your guard. You'll realise that you'll get a lot more supporters that can relate to you, and that was something that I was really surprised about. People would just message me like, I love what you said there, or I totally agree, and then all of a sudden you start to build these relationships, and then you get to see what they're doing. So I guess just try it out, start slow, start steady, and just try and be authentic. That's what I do, and like you said, Andy, I try to give that authentic. I try to cover things that I think a lot of people don't expect, such as the tenant issues and stuff like that. Whereas I'm not that kind of polished person. I'm a bit rough around the edges, but I'll show it to you how I'm dealing with it and how it's come across. So I would definitely embrace it. Take action, embrace it, and build on it. And Rome wasn't built in a day, right? So if I look back at my first stories, they were awful. I was, like you said, it was crickets. I was stiff. It's just building on it and becoming more confident with it. That's the key, and you will do over time.
And you just got to stick with it, haven't you? You just got to slog it out, have the belief, have the faith, and you know what? The examples of it working are all around you. You see people who've amassed a lot of followers who are getting good results, but it does take time, and it does take some good old fashioned sort of elbow grease.
Definitely, and don't compare yourself to other people, because that would be the worst thing. If you're looking at like yourself or myself, we've been doing this for a long time. We've built up a brand. People know us. That's the key. People don't will know anyone if they start from the beginning. So just focus on you. Focus on your following, growing up. But don't focus on anyone. Focus on you, the message that you want to send out, and get on with it.
It's great advice, Craig. Before we wrap up today, I saw an interesting post recently. Can't remember who it was by. And it was a summary of some of the predictions made by some of the big experts in the industries, the Knight Franks, the Savills, the Nationwide, on things like house prices. And almost every single one of them was wildly inaccurate. Sadly, hardly surprising. But you're close to the ground. You're very much in the market, very active in the market. And I'd much prefer to get the ear of somebody like you on these sorts of things. So best guesses, and we won't hold you to this, but best guesses for property values in 2023 and where you think we might end up versus where we are today.
Yeah, so my forecast is that I predict, and I'm quite a bit doom and gloom on this, because I only focus on one area, so that will differ to the other areas of the country. But I think there'll be an overall dip of between 10 to 15%. That's kind of my forecast. And in my area, I aim for 15 to 20%.
So you stand to lose quite a bit of money.
Yeah.
But okay, so actually, that it was not as doom and gloom as I thought it was going to be, because I have read some reports recently I've heard a few people talking about more like 20, 25%, and I'm not there. I'm probably in line with you actually, Craig, 10 to 15%. And when I'm looking at everything right now, I'm just factoring it in when I'm buying it. I'm obviously trying to buy at much better value, and I'm not getting carried away with revaluations, and I think that's so important. For anybody who's listening to today's episode, heed Craig's advice, because if you're raising private finance to buy deals and paying that finance back is conditional on getting a particular valuation, whatever you do, make sure you're being realistic about that valuation and the real possibility of, we can call it down valuations, but it'll probably just be the new valuations, because the actual real-time values will more than likely come down. We are seeing it, and we got clobbered by a couple of things at the end of last year as well. So I'm totally with you, and I'm about there with you on 10 to 15% as well. I've got one more question about interest rates and what you think, or what your best guess is on where interest rates might end up at the end of the year.
Yeah, so I'm baking in 5%. That's kind of where
5% consumer level or 5% base rate?
5% base rate.
Wow. Okay, so that would probably make actual rates like what, 6.5, something like that.
Exactly. Yeah. So so in terms of actual mortgage rates, I'm baking in 6.5. Yeah. So that's it's not looking good, but that's where I think it's going to go. I'm
not quite as pessimistic. I'm hoping more like sort of 5 3/4 to 6, and I think I'll be really upset if things are ending up around 6. But I guess we'll see. That might be your mortgage broker calling you now, Craig, saying
what are you saying?
the rates are going up. Craig, it's been an absolute pleasure having you back on the show. I can't believe we waited this long to get you on the show. We'll have to get you back on soon. And of course, it's only 59 days to go, not that I'm counting, till we'll be back out in the Alps together on our annual proper ski trip, doing lots of high class, high caliber professional networking.
Absolutely.
And I can't wait.
Be cool. And it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for having me, and can't wait till it goes live.